All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, in 2011, the Big 12 Conference barely survived realignment in college football. We saw Colorado leave for the Pac-12, Nebraska left for the Big 10, and then in 2012, both Missouri and Texas A&M joined the SEC. Now, the Big 12 was able to stay afloat as they added TCU and West Virginia. But that time around, it was the Big East Conference that bit the dust for football as some of their key members joined the Big 10, ACC, and Big 12 respectively. However, this time around, it could be the Big 12 that could soon dissolve. Now, reports are surfacing that both Oklahoma and Texas have reached out in regards to joining the Southeastern Conference. And if Oklahoma and Texas were indeed ready to jump the shark, the Big 12 does not have the remaining schools that could fill the void in order to help them maintain their national relevance. Now, at the end of the day, money talks. And you're talking about the revenue gap right now between the SEC and Big 12, and it's nearly $300 million. So, this more than likely is going to happen. But at the end of the day, if this is it for the Big 12, don't feel sorry for this conference, because a couple of years ago, the Big 12 scoffed at the notion of allowing Memphis and Houston to join. And of course, you had schools in the Big 12 that didn't want Houston to join because they were worried about having to compete with another school within the state of Texas when it came to recruiting. Memphis did have the money to help them help the Big 12 with get a corporate sponsor from FedEx for the conference championship game, but they turned them down as well. And at the end of the day, of all of the Power 5 conferences that we have, the Big 12 is the only one that really technically does not have enough teams to have a conference championship game. You're really supposed to have at least 12. And the Big 12 was able to get a special waiver from the NCAA in order to have a conference championship game. It's just their way of trying to keep up with the Joneses. I really think it's stupid that you have a 9-game conference schedule, and then you still turn around and have two teams play that already face each other during the regular season. For me, a conference championship game really, comes down to when you have two separate divisions within a conference. And of course, all of those teams in both divisions are not going to face each other. That I get, but it's just a Big 12's way rather of trying to keep up. Now, the $1 million question right now is, would the SEC welcome both Oklahoma and Texas? And I'll tell you right now, one team that is definitely going to be against this is going to be Texas A&M, because A&M left the Big 12 a few years ago because they wanted to get out of Texas's shadow. And not only is A&M out of Texas's shadow, they're also, bringing in more revenue in the SEC than they were in the Big 12. And on top of that, they're the only team in the SEC that calls Texas home, so that gives them an edge on recruiting. Now, if Texas and Oklahoma were to join, obviously that changes, because you look at it, Oklahoma gets a lot of their top prospects from Texas. Texas, of course, gets all of their top prospects from Texas. And now, since A&M joined the SEC, we have the likes of Alabama and LSU who are also dipping into the state of Texas. So the Aggies could really once again get lost in the shuffle, kind of like how they were in the days of the Big 12. But at the end of the day, if Oklahoma and Texas were to join the SEC, and I think ultimately they will, this will only separate the SEC further from the other power conferences. And at the end of the day, the reason why we have a college football playoff is because of the SEC. I don't care what anybody says, but when you have a scenario where one team, or one conference rather, had a representative in the BCS championship game about 7 or 8 straight years, then on top of that, when the SEC was the only conference to have a SEC versus SEC championship game for the national title, the other conferences are going to be envious. And then fast forwarding to the college football playoff, we saw a scenario a few years ago where Georgia faced Alabama for the national championship as both of them won their respective semifinal matchups. So, the expansion of the college football playoff is coming down to the fact that, the other conferences rather, are not thrilled with the dominance of the SEC, namely Alabama. So, with that said, adding two more blue bloods in college football, such as Texas and Oklahoma, is only going to make that brand even better. Now, if Texas and Oklahoma were to jump to the SEC, what's going to happen to the other Big 12 members? I'll tell you right now, if the Big 12 wanted to stay afloat, and I guarantee you they're going to try, they definitely probably reach out to Houston and Memphis again, maybe SMU, and possibly Boise State. Is it going to be enough? I don't know, and I doubt it. But, I'll tell you right now, if it doesn't happen, I wouldn't be surprised to see West Virginia join the ACC. They could once again rekindle a lot of their rivalries with schools such as Syracuse and Pitt that they had in the Big East Conference. It would also be better for them recruiting-wise for both football and basketball. I would not be surprised if Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, TCU, and Baylor all jump ship and join the Pac-12. The Pac-12 would probably just be salivating just to dip into that Texas market and bring in some more revenue, especially since the Pac-12 network was not as successful as Commissioner Larry Scott envisioned once it started. Kansas, I could see Kansas in play for the Big Ten. It would be more of a basketball move than it would be a football move. Of course, KU is not that dominant on the gridiron, but they darn sure are dominant on the hardwood, and they would fit in right there with the Big Ten. But then that leaves Iowa State and K-State, who could be in limbo. And just like it was when the Big East, or the original Big East, dissolved nearly 10 years ago, and of course we saw the likes of Pitt and Syracuse go to the ACC, Rutgers go to the Big Ten, West Virginia go to the Big 12. Some of those other schools were left in limbo, a la, Cincinnati, who then had to go to the American Athletic Conference. And of course, the AAC is not considered a Power 5 conference, as it's more of a Group of 5 conference. And with that said, I think all this is going to do is further distance the haves from the have-nots in college football. It's all about money. These ADs and school presidents are going to continue to chase that dollar in order for the revenue, and that's what it comes down to. These schools, they're going to sit back and see, well, you know what? If this conference is bringing in $700 million and we're only bringing in $350 here, you know what? Let me go over there and get a piece of that pie. That's what it comes down to. That's why Rutgers and Maryland joined the Big Ten a couple of years ago. This is why Texas and Oklahoma are currently on the SEC's radar. And this is why this will consistently happen. It's all about the almighty dollar. Who can get the most of it? That is the ultimate winner in college athletics. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take the time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin. Take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.